Hey, it's Aaron from GameEnthus.com, and you can't see me because I'm recording in a place I don't normally record in. But I still do have that ding sound, and a box will appear showing you what I'm talking about today. The game I'm talking about today is Earth Rising, a prototype of Earth Rising. If you're not sure if it's a prototype, it says prototype. So it's a prototype. 20 years to transform our world. Earth Rising was designed by Laurie Blake and is being published by Stop, Drop, and Roll. Plays about 90 to 120 minutes, 1 to 6 players, ages 10 and up. In Earth Rising, players are going to be working together in order to save the world by taking unsustainable practices, making them sustainable, hopefully pulling people out of poverty, fighting against the status quo, etc., etc. Let me show you what's in the box. In Earth Rising, you're going to be affecting 6 different areas: culture, politics, energy, industry, agriculture, and infrastructure. I'll go ahead and get the board set up really quickly. In the game, like I said, you will be affecting culture, politics, energy, industry, agriculture, and infrastructure. The other thing to point out is that for the prototype, this is huge. This has a very big footprint. This is the prototype. The finished version of the game will have a round board where all these things will fit in a little neater. But for right now, this is a prototype, but it will play pretty much the same way. You have your calendar cards that are here. These are your countdown timer for the whole game. You start off in 2021 and you have until 2041 to try to beat the game. An interesting note is that every individual turn is a year. So it's not as if everybody takes a turn and then you count the year down. Like every turn is a year. So you have 20 turns. If you're playing with 6 people, I guess everybody would get 3 and somebody might get 4 turns, but you go through it much faster. If you're playing single player, you're probably controlling 2 different characters. I'll get into them in a second. Needless to say, it's challenging. It goes by fast. You have this full board. You have all these different areas. You have major and minor burden. So this minor burden is biodiversity loss. And you have biodiversity loss here as a major burden, these 2. What you don't want to happen is have what you call ecological collapse. So these small black tokens are called strain. And if between the major and minor versions of a burden have 15 strain on them collectively, bad things happen. And you pull out these tokens and they're indelible. They won't go away. Pretty bad. But I'm kind of jumping ahead here. So in the game, you're going to be controlling up to 6 different character types. You have the ecologist here, and they use these regeneration tokens, which help to relieve some of the strain that can be placed on the board. You'll see how that works in a moment. And nice thing is on the back of every card is also a little player guide on what your actions will be. I'll go over those in a second. You have the activist here. Every character has their own special ability. The activist will use these fist tokens here in order to take on any unsustainable practices. And all of these little tokens there's 2 in each section. They all have unsustainable practices on them. However, let me just show you for an example. On each sustainable practice is also an unsustainable practice. So you start off with unsustainable practices that you're trying to get rid of the unsustainable practice, and then subsequently later on in the game you want to institute the sustainable version of that. So unsustainable practice here is low wage jobs. The sustainable version is universal basic income. Another example would be sustainable, cultural diversity. Discrimination, unsustainable. So you have things that are like polar opposites. The thing about it is you start off with 2 unsustainable in each area, but you can't flip them over. You have to get rid of the unsustainable practice and then institute the sustainable practice. It's hard, it's challenging, which is kind of why every turn takes a year, essentially. The activist's ability is when one of these tokens is out, the activist is the only character that can just flip an unsustainable practice to being a sustainable practice, which kind of counters what I just said. But that's something that only activists can do. Most characters will have to get rid of the unsustainable practice and then institute the sustainable version of it later on. You have a climatologist. She has an ability as well, but doesn't use any special token. You have the grassroots politician, the eco-investor, who can basically get extra cards. And you have the innovator, who's going to use these startup tokens. They're able to place these into the center. And what you can't see here is population in poverty. That's what all these meeples in the center here represent, people who are living in poverty. And one of the nuances of the game is that if you notice, each one of these unsustainable practices basically has 2 meeples with it. So you see 4 here in the purple section, but there's only 2 practices. Each practice has 2 meeples, essentially. But the interesting thing about the game is when you get rid of an unsustainable practice, this one is single-use clothing. If you get rid of it, there were people who worked in that field, who worked to make, sell, whatever, single-use clothing. They go back into poverty. Now, when you are able to develop a sustainable practice, which is ethically sourced goods, this comes back out. 2 people come back out. 2 meeples come back out with it. So once sustainable practice comes in, you pull people out of poverty and keep them in a sustainable practice. But the thing that makes it, I guess, what makes it interesting is that there's no one solution that just works for everything instantly. If you take a look at an industry that's not efficient, that's killing the earth, and you just get rid of it, well, the people who work those jobs don't have jobs. So it's not as if, oh, well, we stopped doing this unsustainable practice, everything's better. No, some things have improved, but more people are out of work. So it all kind of works together. Message. So those are the 6 characters you can use. For right now, I'm going to choose the activist, and the other characters will go back in the box. I'm not going to need these tokens because I don't have the ecologist, and I'm not using the innovator. And yes, that is my need. Desperate times call for desperate measures. Kind of in the middle of a move. Things are kind of all over the place, but the content has to be made. So on your turn, I use one of the ones I'm not playing with as serve as my example. You're able to take 4 actions per turn. So one of those actions can be to disband an unsustainable practice. Okay. Create a sustainable practice. Those are 2 separate things. Clean up to 4 strain from any ecological burden. The strain are all the black tokens all the way around. The thing about it, the strain is, let's take this one for example. You have biodiversity loss and land conversion. Oops, should have one on there. You're only able to have 5 tokens. You're only able to have 5 strain tokens on a minor burden, ecological burden. You're able to have more on a major. The thing about it is, once you hit 5 on the minor, it starts to affect the major. So once land conversion has 5 strain on it, then I'll start adding more to biodiversity loss. But I have to be careful because if biodiversity loss here and biodiversity loss here both add up to 15, that's when the ecological collapse occurs and things just get messy. Oh, and these tokens here, when you have ecological collapses, you actually heat up the temperature of the planet even more, And when you're having to dole out more strain at the end of your turn, you'll see that in a moment, you have more to dole out. So it makes it considerably worse. So for every trio, every 3 meeples in poverty, you have to put out that much more strain, starting with where you are. So from the eco investor, I have to start with blue, and I'll be adding a strain going all the way around at the end of my turn, unfortunately. And then you look at each individual area, and you're gonna have to add strain based on how many sustainable or unsustainable practices you have there. So when you're beginning the game, it's really tough because they're all unsustainable. So you're adding a lot of strain there. Let me go over the deck here. The influence deck is full of different cards. So let's take this one. You have voter apathy on one side, which is the unsustainable practice. And then you have civics education, which is the sustainable practice. So players are going to be using these cards. You see it's purple. This one is red. A lot of red here. Basically, it's all the colors of the different characters. So the eco investor is going to be concerned about blues, and the activist is going to be concerned about purples. The eco investor is able to take a single blue card, discard it. That's a discard pile over there. So let's say the eco investor had this card. So we have financial gatekeeping, which is unsustainable, and then the sustainable is social service protections. Do I have any one of those here? Hold on. Better example. Let's say the eco investor had this card here, this influence card. This is this is for infrastructure, blue. So it's greenhouse gas emissions, that's unsustainable. And then micro mobility is the sustainable practice for this card. So because it's blue and the eco investor is blue, I'll be able to just discard this single card and get rid of the unsustainable practice of greenhouse gas emissions because it matches with this card. That's how you get rid of an unsustainable practice, but it goes into the discard pile, which is why one of the actions you can take is to shuffle the discard pile. The only way you can get micro-mobility out here as a sustainable practice is to get this card back into the deck so it can be played again. So the other actions are give a player 1 card, and then I'll draw an extra card, and then I already said reshuffle the discard pile back into the influence deck. So those steps are necessary in order to get the cards you need back out, because if you're getting rid of the unsustainable practice with that card, you need that very same card to institute the sustainable version. And then you have what are called status quo cards. So one of the enemies of the game is the status quo, meaning keep things as they are. So don't improve, don't do any better. So you have monopolistic takeover, fossil fuel lobbying, corporate populist rises, austerity cutbacks, traditionalist resurgence, and mass deregulation. So you're going to shuffle these up. You would draw 3. The others back in the box. So we got our mass deregulation, austerity cutbacks, and corporate populist rises. So then you would divide the deck into 3 and then put one of the thirds onto each, and that would be the entire deck that would go right here. I'll do that now, but you won't see it. Each player will get 2 cards, and this is a co-op game, so it's okay if you show them. That's all right. Okay, so the activist has universal basic income and low-wage jobs, and nature needs half, and deforestation. Eco-investor has greenhouse gas emissions and micromobility, as well as votes match seats, and the unsustainable version is a winner takes all. Let's start the game. I'll put this here for reference. Those are the actions that I can take on my turn. Okay, so the year is 2021. That's the first year of the game. That's how it begins. Every section has, full section has 3 different strain on it. So it's the eco investor's turn. So the eco investor has a special move, special ability. It says whenever drawing, you may draw an extra card, look at it, then give it to another player or place it at the bottom of the deck. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to clean up for strain. So I'm going to clean up some strain in the area and infrastructure, because why not? So I'll clean up one of these, which means this has to go to here. The minor burden always has to have more than the major burden. So I got rid of 4 strain. That's one of the only thing I can do is I can disband an unsustainable practice. So I have a card here because it's blue and the eco-investor is blue. I'm going to get rid of greenhouse gas emissions. So I'll put this over in the discard pile and this just goes away. Just put it right there. Which also means, unfortunately, the people who worked that industry are back in poverty. You can do the same move more than once. You just can't do more than 4 different things, 4 actions essentially. So I took 2. First was to remove 4 strain. Second was to disband a unsustainable practice. But then unfortunately, the people who work in the industry are back in poverty, which, nuance. If I draw a card, I can, let's see. Okay, I'm going to draw a card and I can always draw an extra one. Okay, and I can give it to another player or place it bottom of the deck. It's green. Other thing I did not mention, you're able to create sustainable practices or disband unsustainable practices if you have 2 cards that aren't yours. So let's say let's say hypothetically the eco-investor had both these green cards. If one of the cards match to one of the practices here in the agriculture section, what is it, overpopulation? What is it? Oh, sorry, deforestation and habitat destruction. I don't have either one of those, unfortunately. But if I did, how you can remove practices from an area that's not the color that you are, is you have to have 2 of that color. You have to have 1 card that matches what you're trying to disband or create, and then another card of the same color. You would discard both, and then you can do it for your own section with the same color, blue and blue. You just need 1. For activists, if I had a purple card, I can affect culture with just 1 purple card. But eco-investor would need 2 purple to affect culture, whereas the activist would need 2 blue to affect infrastructure. If that makes sense. Hopefully it does. So let's see. I disbanded, I cleaned up 4 strain, got a card. You can also give a player a card. Well, because of my taking the extra card, I'm just gonna do that. I think you have a hand size of 5, I believe. I think you can't have any more than 5 cards. So I disbanded, cleaned up, draw a card. All right, I can get rid of 4 more strain. You got to keep strain under control. Otherwise, it gets really bad really quickly. And that's the end of my turn. Now, this is the part that kind of stinks. Now that I've done that, now I have to go through, and for every 3 meeples, I have to add a strain starting with my area. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So there's 6 trios of meeples there. So I got to take 6 strain. And unfortunately, I have to dole it out starting with my area in blue. 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Oh, it gets worse. So now that I've done that, I've introduced more strain in many of the areas based on the population in poverty here, I have to go through each section and add more strain based on what's there. So for infrastructure, I start off with my own. I'm introducing one strain because I have one unsustainable practice here. In every other area, I have 2. So I'll be adding 2 strain to every other minor area. So you see, I cleaned up a lot. I cleaned up 8, but a lot of it comes back though, because that's just how it goes. But this one has 5 now, and this one has 5. So any more in these 2 areas are going to start getting into the major burdens. You can't see it, it's called, that's water withdrawal, and this is nitrogen phosphorus loading. And that's EcoInvestor's turn. Now I've come over here to the activist. She has the same options. The only difference is she's able to use the protest tokens and flip over certain practices. Well, what it does is if you put the fists next to an area, what it means is for another action, be it the activist or someone else, they're able to just flip it. She makes her protest token allows, I think, anybody to be able to flip something from unsustainable to sustainable. Not the other way around, because that would be crazy. All right, let's see what's in the green section here. Deforestation. Okay, so, well, first thing she's going to do is she's going to clean up some strain. These are at 5 already, so she's going to take these 2. And then these are at 4, so she'll take those as well. So her first action was to clean up 4 strain. She did that. Now she's going to disband an unsustainable practice. Deforestation is here. She has deforestation. But because she's not green, it's going to require deforestation itself, of course, and then another card of a matching color. So she needs 2 greens. One of them has to be the actual match. And deforestation will be gone. But unfortunately, that means the people who worked in that industry are now out of a job. So we have another 3 meeples in the center there, which means when strain comes around, there's going to be even more strain because more people are living in poverty. All right, so she took 2 actions. She reduced strain, disbanded. She'll take another card. Okay, another green here. Nope, this is habitat destruction. And unfortunately, this one is regenerative mixed farming or industrial chemical farming. So that's 3 actions. And her 4th is going to be, I could take another card. I could get rid of more strain. It's probably better that I do that. She's going to do another round of strain removal. So I should do 1, 2, 3, 4. Reduce 4 more strain, gone. All right, now it's time to look at the meeples and add more strain, starting with the purple area because that's her area. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So now I have to start off with my area and add 7 strain. Not good. 7. So she had strain. And then remember, for every area, she's to go in and add even more. So that one's going to have its 5th. This one is already at 5, so I have to add 1 here. Actually, I'm adding 2. Every unsustainable adds a strain, whereas every sustainable reduces it by a strain. And if you have the ecologist's icon next to an area, it reduces strain by +1 again. I'm not sure if I started here already, so I think that's 2. That's 2. Got to go into there because I have 5 there already. Oop, and that one fell. So this is going to be another 2. And these 2 are just going to go right here. Comes at you fast. I'll take one more turn with the EcoInvestor just to sort of show you how it works again. All right. EcoInvestor is going to take a card. It is carbon credits or feed-in tariffs. have neither one of those. So that's gonna take another card and either put it at the bottom of the deck or give it to another player. Overproduction and energy trading. I don't have either one of those, but here we are. All right, so that's one action done. Second action is going to be to clean up some strain. 2, 3, 4. And then do it again. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's 3 actions. I drew a card, cleaned up twice. I guess I could do it again. 1, 2, 3. Not the most eventful turn, but here we are. And then unfortunately, because of everything here, I would have to put out more strain because of the population in poverty. And then for each individual area, each unsustainable would add a strain. At least these two are only adding 1 because they only have 1 unsustainable practice. But let me just show you how it would work if I actually had something I could use. So let's say the eco investor had the urban forests / urban mental stress card. So what they would do is, because blue is blue, they go ahead and play that, and they would find that practice. Okay, urban forests, and that practice would come out here into the blue area, and then 2 people will come out of poverty, thus reducing the population of poverty, which reduces the strain that has to come out, which is good. And then this reduces the strain because this would essentially cancel this out. So when you're going through that second round of doling out strain, you wouldn't put anything in infrastructure because -1 and 1, because this is sustainable. And that's how Earth Rising plays essentially. As I was saying earlier, once you have up to 15 in one area, so matching a major and minor color, so like these two, these two. These two. If they had 15, first time it happens, you have to draw a card, and you would have to place one of the ecological collapses on the leftmost area. And unfortunately, what that means is nothing can ever go there. It would just be there forever. So that's bad. Oh, wait a minute. What did I draw? You'd pull this out, know what area to put in. So you put it in infrastructure. So the leftmost one would have that. I'm not sure if the meeple goes with that or not. I think actually you would probably send them back, unfortunately, into poverty. But once an ecological collapse token comes out, they stay. So you really want to avoid getting those. And this game is co-op, and part of it does sort of remind me of a pandemic where you're working together, and as you keep drawing, like you're gonna eventually get status quo cards, and you have to do what they say. So status quo strikes, austerity cutbacks. So it says draw 1 influence card plus 1 for each sustainable infrastructure practice. So if you've been doing well, you have to draw more of these cards, which gets you closer to drawing yet another one of these cards. And then it says add any unsustainable practices drawn to the board. If the practice drawn is already unsustainable, add 2 ecological strain tokens to that sector. If it already has 5 sustainable, disband it and remove it from the board. So status quo cards are really bad. One thing I forgot to do, I keep forgetting that, is the calendar. Every turn I was supposed to go from 2021, 2022, 2023, and so on and so forth. So I did not do that. That was a mistake on my part. You are trying to get the cards to, you want your color so you can really do a really good job getting the unsustainable practices out of your area, and hopefully instituting some sustainable ones, which reduces the amount of strain that the system's going to face. The whole point of the game, which somehow I've never really seemed to mention, is you're trying to get, once you have all the strain removed, you're trying to flip these areas over and fill in the board. So basically you want to remove all the strain from an area so that the major and minor burdens just create more space for people to live, and more, hopefully, sustainable practices can be put on these areas. You want to do that all across the whole board. You're basically trying to get these to come in here so you can win the game. Somehow Didn't mention that in all this time. That's weird. I don't know how I did all this talking. Didn't mention what the actual goal was. I mentioned the countdown clock, which I forgot to use. It's way over there too. But yeah. So that is Earth Rising. That's how it plays. It's a pretty challenging co-op game. It's definitely, smacking you over the head with its message the whole time you're playing. I'm okay with that. So yeah, that's Earth Rising. It's up on Kickstarter. Link is in the description below. If this seems like, if you want to play this game and save the Earth by yourself with other people, I suggest you go out there and support Earth Rising. And I believe every game sold, 50% of the money is going to go to some foundations, 3 or 4 different foundations. More detail can be found about that on the Kickstarter, on the Stop, Drop, and Roll website as well. So I'm rambling. That's Earth Rising. Hopefully you were able to follow along what I was doing, even though I wasn't using the countdown clock at all. I don't know what I'm doing. So that's going to do it for me. Thank you for watching. Take care. Share the video, like it, send it to a friend, send it to an enemy. That's going to do it for me. Take care. Be blessed.